7.5 is basically just doing everything from the first from the first 4 sections of chapter 7, but it's not telling you what you're going to do. So you're going to have some that are just ones to factor something out. You're going to have some trinomials. You're going to have some difference of two squares. You're going to have some that are perfect square trinomials. And you're going to have some that are 4 terms and you have to factor by grouping. So I'm just going to do a few here. I do recommend that you learn how to do these ones because they're ones that you see kind of a lot. So let's say we have x squared minus x minus 42. So we see that we have a minus here for our c term. And that means we're going to have one plus and one minus. And since this b is also a minus, that means the bigger number is going to be a minus. So I'm going to put here is x minus and x plus. And so all the factors that exist for 42 are 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, 4 won't go in, 5 won't go in, 6, 7 times. So our answer here, we need to subtract to get to 1. So we're going to use the 7 minus the 6, and this will be our answer. Then let's say that we have pretty close to that, x squared plus 13x plus 42. This time we're going to have 2 pluses and we're going to add up to 13. So again, 142, 2 times 21, 3 times 14, and 6 times 7. So here it's going to be 6 and 7 again. And you could write this as x plus 7, x plus 6. It doesn't matter when they're both pluses like this, what order you put them in. Same thing if they were both minuses. Okay, then let's say that we have x y to the 3 minus 14 y to the 3. Okay, so we have 2 terms subtracted by a minus sign, but notice that we have a y to the 3 in both, so we can factor that out. So we have y to the 3, and we're left here with x, and here minus 14. Now we don't have a difference of 2 squares here. All we were able to do is factor out the y to the 3. So neither of these was a perfect square, and even when we factored something out, it wasn't a perfect square. So this here is as far as we can go on this one. And then let's do a one with 4 terms. X squared y plus 9y plus 10x squared plus 90. Now whenever we have 4 terms like this, we have to factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first 2, and I'm going to group the second 2. Now what can we factor out of the first 2? They both have a y in them, so I can factor out a y, and I'm left with x squared plus 9. Then we have a plus in here, so I'm going to say plus, and we can factor out a 10 from both of these. So 10, and we're left with x squared plus 9. Now, x squared is a perfect square, 9 is a perfect square, but there's a plus sign in here. So that means it's not a difference of 2 squares. So, but this was a factor by grouping. We see that we had x squared plus 9 in both of them, so we can factor that out, and we're left with a y and plus 10. So here our answer is going to be x squared plus 9, y plus 10. Don't go any further on this one. Even though these are both perfect squares, it's a plus sign in between here. If this was a minus sign, then we would have to go another step. There aren't any homework questions on this part of it, but there are some in the next chapter, and it doesn't really explain how to do those. For some reason, this section got skipped for you guys, but what you've been doing is factoring to just find what the factors of something are. But let's say that we want to solve something. And before we just had x squared plus bx plus c, and then we factored it. But if we have, sometimes there was ax squared. If we set all of that to 0, that's how we're going to solve what x is. Because remember, what you're going to get here is two factors. And if we set that equal to 0, we'll know that we can solve for our x here. X, because if we have two, let's say this binomial is A, this binomial is B. If we have A equals 0, and then 0 times B equals 0. If B equals 0, then A times B equals 0, and this would be right. Or if both of them equal 0. So what we're going to do is, after we factor everything, we're going to set everything to 0. So let's say that we have x squared minus 8x plus 15 equals 0. So what we need to do is factor this first. And our factors of 15 that exist are 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. We see that because it's a plus 15 here, that they're both going to be the same sign as the middle, which is a minus. So we're going to have an x minus, and our factors have to add up to 8, and that's going to be 3 and 5. So we're going to put a 3 and a 5. So to solve this, we're going to say x minus 3 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0. So solve for x equals 3, x equals 5. So if either of these is correct, then these are both our answers to this solution. If we substitute our numbers in here, we can say, I'll do the 3 first, so 3 squared minus 8 times 3 plus 15, does that equal 0? 3 squared is 9 minus 24 plus 15, does that equal 0? 9 plus 15 equals 24, minus 24, yes, that equals 0. Let's try the 5. We're going to have 5 squared minus 8 times 5 plus 15. 5 squared is 25. 8 times 5, so minus 40 plus 15. 25 plus 15 equals 40. Minus 40 equals 0. You're not going to have to do any of these in this section, but you will have to in a few in the next chapter. I'll go over some of those. I think there's only 1 or 2 that you're going to be doing. But you will need to do this a lot later on in future classes. Whenever you have an x squared or an x to the cubed, to solve for that, you set the whole thing, you put everything on one side of the equal sign and equal to 0. Unlike what we had, like 2x plus 4 equals, equals 3. What here we would do is move the 4 over and then solve for x. But if we had 2x squared plus 4 equals 3, we would have to move the 3 over to this side so that we have everything on one side of the equal sign and it equals 0. Don't stress about that too much here. Like I said, you're going to see it more in your next class and a couple of times in the next chapter, but I will go over it a little bit more there.